Welcome back to Animal Crossing New Horizons. I'm dear darling. Should we see what's going on a lovely island of Fawnhallow today in a late night episode because I was busy for this evening, and if you can tell by today's title, I guess we'll probably be talking about it a little bit. Rather than the other thing which I was going to talk about today, but I guess I'll talk about that tomorrow instead. But yeah, basically super last minute, my friends were like, hey, let's go see a movie, let's go see The New Quiet Place. And I was like, I didn't even know there was a New Quiet Place, to be honest, but you know, here we are. And I got back from watching it. Yeah, I don't know, I warn you before any spoilers or anything, if you're curious, but good evening, everyone. I'm here with a late night broadcast. Hope I can make it through this. Right now in Fawnhallow, it's 12:47am on Saturday, June 29th, 2024. Technically, this should be Friday, June 28th, 2024, but still. But yeah, the third installment of A Quiet Place is out. What did I think of it? I don't know how to describe it except for I think this is my favourite, the one I enjoyed the most, but it would not be the one I think is the best. I think probably the first one is still the best, and I think most people would like it. Like, if I was to recommend it, I would recommend the first one. But for me, I like the third one more. And the reason is, it's a very surprisingly character focused. Like, I think the way I said it to my friends after watching it was like, that movie felt way more like a drama than it felt like a horror movie or even a thriller. Like, if you're going into A Quiet Place 3 expecting a similar thing to A Quiet Place 1 and 2, I think you'll be in for a surprise because it's very different. A Quiet Place 1, I think, is a sort of like, I don't know if the concept itself is all that novel, but it's novel, I suppose, within its execution. I don't know many other horror movies with this sort of sound-based enemy, but it's novel in its concept, not in its concept, in its execution. But it's a nice, like, sort of horror movie with like really tense and dramatic moments. It's also one which I think is a movie which does actually rely on suspension of disbelief quite a lot as well, mainly because I also think the movie feels like somewhat I wish I could, you know, I'm not CinemaSins, I'm not going to sit here and point out all the logical fallacies or flaws in it because honestly I can't remember them, so I think it's remiss of me to necessarily comment on it as a fact. But things like how inconsistently the monsters here, I suppose, in first one, and some things which seem like are very obvious things, and also like the army are straight up incompetent in all three movies. It's a thing which you had to put aside to, I suppose, like, buy into the movie. But amusingly enough, I think for the first and second one, the suspension of disbelief is low enough that most people are probably willing to suspend their disbelief and be like, okay, yeah, that didn't quite make sense, but I understand, you know, if it's for entertainment, I think that was the most entertaining thing they could have done. Weirdly, A Quiet Place 3, or Quiet Place Day 1, I think has the highest requirement for suspension of disbelief, and it's also one I don't think it quite gets there in the end, but I still enjoyed it the most because it's a very sort of character driven, almost like metaphorical, I suppose, exploration of an idea, I suppose, is kind of basically what this movie was. So I guess we'll be getting into mild spoilers. This entire movie, to me, it feels like a movie where it's just like, oh, it's a really cool, like, sort of idea and conversation that they want to have about things. In this case, it's mostly about sort of death and the sort of like the acceptance of it. Especially the acceptance of it for you know, like as an inevitability. But it's one which has like cool concepts that it wants to explore, and it has an idea of how it wants to explore it. But it's also a movie where I think the plot and the execution of a plot, of a through line of it, really suffers because of it. Like, I mean, I guess the best stories in history are ones which can tie a cohesive plot with its images and themes that it's trying to explore. This one, I honestly think it kind of missed the mark. Very much so, watching a movie, I was just a bit like, not too bad. It doesn't have like a logical consistency, and so inside of it, it's just like the logic within the movie feels a bit it's not arbitrary. Arbitrary is the wrong word. It doesn't feel like cohesive, I suppose, in that sense. So I guess now when, you know, all bets are off, or there can be any sort of spoilers here and there. But the entire movie is this exploration of this woman, Sam, who is in like a care hospice. She is. It doesn't actually say what she's necessarily suffering from, but she's suffering from some unknown, possibly terminal disease. I assumed it was just like some sort of cancer or something. And she's basically sort of like given up on life and back then. She's got very, very strong sort of hatred against her predicament. And the entire movie, I suppose, is when the apocalypse comes, you know, it's sort of like it's inevitability people are going to die, and especially for her, because she is reliant on this medication, which if the world stops turning, if the world stops functioning, she is not going to be able to survive on. And it's something that she comes to grip with, honestly, very quickly, which is fair enough. Like, it feels like she's very sort of already resigned to her fate and the bad things. Not bad things. Her fate, but like yeah, she's very sort of like resigned to it in the first place. She's accepting of it, and it's kind of that is what is driving the plot forward. Is that it's an exploration of her acceptance of her death, because she's like, there's no way I'm going to be able to survive in an apocalypse if I am relying on medication, which is not going to be readily available. And it's an exploration, I suppose, of that, and how she tries to basically, in her mind, and I suppose in practicality, she is already dead. So she's just trying to achieve these last things as these final comforts in life before she passes away. And that's basically what this like story is exploring, I suppose, like that journey to it and the setbacks along the way. And she meets another character, this character who is also sort of being faced with impending doom, like impending death of the apocalypse, but not one which is guaranteed, and how he fails, I suppose, to really tackle it. Like, he doesn't understand what he should be doing, and he's just scared of dying. So it's like really this sort of like fear and acceptance of death, which is played around with and explored a little bit within this movie. By the way, my explanations, my analysis might be completely wrong, by the way. I don't have a literature degree or anything like that. This is just using my own natural media literacy, which maybe is not even good enough, who knows. But yeah, his story is about one, but he fears death so much so that like it sort of like paralyzes him to a certain extent, but him eventually overcoming that and finding that sort of lease to keep on living, and then carry on like the legacy of the stranger who helped him realize that. And he helped her achieve her goal of getting some like final closure before she passed away. So it's like super character driven. Like, I always say for like the first half of a movie, I definitely went in expecting it to be like A Quiet Place 1 or A Quiet Place 2, which I'm not saying is necessarily a good or bad thing, it just is a thing. And apparently the trailers very much supported that fact. But then like the plot of it is not that amazingly executed. Like, the entire driving point of the plot at the beginning, at least how it feels like, is like, oh, she is not at all interested in self-preservation. She is just trying to get pizza, which is like, okay, I mean, like, I know despite the situation, like with her terminal illness, presumably that makes sense, but it does feel like weird. It kind of feels like weird of like why this other guy is here, I suppose, as well. And his justification is that he's scared, and you can kind of get the feeling he doesn't want to be alone, he doesn't really know what to do, which is like fine, but like apart from that, there's not really much else of a plot. It's why I say this is a story driven by this metaphorical ideas that it's trying to explore. It's trying to explore it by the fact that she's trying to get to her old like family home or haunt or whatever, and cherish those past memories that she has before she dies. That's a sort of exploration which is going on, but the plot does suffer at it because there's not really much of a driving force behind it. But the driving force is her trying to get to this pizza place, but like it's not that it's arbitrary, but it feels so just sort of like it's not enough to keep the plot being pulled forward, I think, like well enough. But the thing which very much carries it is the characters, I suppose, and the exploration of it. I think I also describe this movie more than anything else feels like I'm watching basically like a YouTube video cut together of a load of cutscenes from a video game, but none of the gameplay in it. Like, there's so many beautiful shots in this movie, like whoever was the cinematographer or did like the staging or storyboarding was need to raise, because it was a beautifully shot movie. I think it's just the plot itself was just like, it felt like so disconnected from each other. It just felt like they're here, this happens, and the monster's here. They're here, this happens, a monster's here. They're here, monster's here. They're here, the monster's here as well, which is, you know, kind of like the driving point. But if anything, I feel like it should dial it back a little bit or something. And almost, I want to say, is that this movie suffers as being in the same franchise as The Quiet Place 1 and 2, mainly because of one of expectation to The Quiet Place already has very sort of like flimsy, scaffolded like buy-in potential, I suppose, or like suspension of belief / plot in the first place, that once this movie sort of like kind of half tosses it out the window, it becomes even harder to buy in that sense. If anything, that's why I'm just like, I feel like this movie should have just like completely ditched quite like, it shouldn't even be a Quiet Place movie or something. It should just be some general apocalypse or whatever, and like exploration of death and the acceptance of it, I suppose. That's what it felt like to me. And I felt like it was very sort of like metaphorical of what's going on, like Sam with it's sort of like a mirror into our mortality, the inevitability of mortality, while I forgot, Eric is more of like a reflection of the human reaction to mortality, like the natural reaction, I'm scared to die, or Sam is very much just full acceptance of it. And then this cat is sort of here like kind of like we're carrying on like of a legacy of a memory of like the will to live, I suppose, or like this some sort of desire is how I'm interpreting it, which makes a plot point suffer like weirdly, because, you know, this cat kind of like goes in and like comes and goes like really randomly to like almost nonsensical. I guess what I mean is all the parts of a plot feel too convenient in a sense, which is why, you know, the buy-in is like not there for me personally. I didn't exactly watch a movie and been like, oh yeah, there's a logical through line. I watched a movie and went, that was random, but, you know, it's kind of cool, I guess. Yeah, I don't know what else to say about it. That's just kind of it. Like, I don't think people will like it more than the first one. I think maybe people might like it more than the second one. I don't really remember what the second one's like. Like, I kind of like the second one. But it very much depends on what you like. You know, it's kind of like, it kind of reminds me of Godzilla -1 or -0, whatever it's called, where the original Godzillas are like a sort of like heavy like kaiju action movies, but then like Godzilla -1 is like this really sort of like hard-hitting drama, not historical drama, but kind of drama about what it means to live and like, you know, redeem yourself, etc., etc. Like what does redemption have to look like, and does it, you know, do you have to die for it? And the answer is no, like no, I suppose. So with Godzilla, I suppose the plot didn't suffer that much. The plot like had like this coherent through line. The only thing which people might comment on is like towards the ending of what felt like something very random happening. Fit the thematics of what I was going for. That is like, I don't know. Go watch my own video on it, I suppose, if you want a deeper dive into that. But it matches the themes, but it doesn't match a plot. It feels weird with a plot. That's kind of like what I felt like this movie was like, just like turned up to 11. I still really enjoyed it, by the way. Like Lupita, I don't know if that's how you say her name. I've seen some of the stuff she's in. I've seen her in Us at the very least. She absolutely killed it with the acting. She was so expressive. Like you could feel. But that's one thing I thought was really cool. Actually, it's like interesting to have like a character-focused exploration movie in the context of A Quiet Place, because everything has to be basically quiet. Everything is communicated just through these like emotional reactions, facial expressions, etc., etc., which I think is actually honestly a very neat concept. It just, I don't know, part of me is just still feels like it shouldn't have been part of this like anthology, even though I know it's not really part of this like anthology. It's its like own sort of spin-off separate thing. I very much appreciate what they did for trying something different. But it's just like, I feel like it needs a stronger backbone of a plot to carry itself through. Yeah, because I guess a big thing is a lot of things feel very sort of randomly arbitrary, how it happens, and there's a lot of inconsistencies with what the monsters can hear. But really the main thing is so different from the first two Quiet Places. It's a lot more sort of subdued, a lot more like subtle in that sort. I'm not sure if subtle's the right word, but a lot more calmer with the way it tries to explore things. Yeah, so I don't know. I would still recommend watching it. I really enjoyed it, to be perfectly honest. It's something I definitely need to stew on, I think, a bit more before everything totally sinks in. Sinks in. I think there was more I wanted to say about it, but I can't remember what at this point, and I'm too tired. So let's finish this thumbnail out. I don't know what I'm going to draw, but times 3. Yeah, like I do like it. But it's a very me film. Like, even one of my friends was like, oh, it felt like a really Dear Darling film. And I'm like, you're 100% right. It was a very me film. But I don't think it's necessarily for everyone. I very much enjoyed it, though. Yeah, I don't know what else to say. I think just on that note, I'm going to round this episode off here because I am tired. So if you have been watching, thank you very much. It's been Animal Crossing New Horizons. I've been Dear Darling. Likes, comments, subscription, shares, greatly appreciated. Socials, Discord down below. Hope we see each other again. But for now, it's our farewell. So until next time, bye-bye for now.